Welcome to the Doghouse. Have a listen as we take a look at life, love, and art in all its forms. Here's your host, the Rock Dog, Andrew Davis.
So before I get started today, I want to make a correction from the last show. I was announcing a bunch of birthdays, and I forgot one, and it's my brother. My brother Alan lives in the UK, and he will be celebrating his 50th on May the 6th. Happy birthday, Al. My mother also wants to send out some messages to her brothers and sisters, including Phyllis and Lindsay, and of course Kathy and Rick and the grandkids as well. She hopes everyone is safe, happy, and healthy. Well, my guest today, back in the 1990s, was the lead singer of a Christian rock band called Surrender. He's also the owner of Jason Parsons Productions and is a performance coach, and I'm not 100% sure, but he may be a spy. Jason Parsons, today in the Doghouse. Hey Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andrew. Pleasure to be here.
So where are you from?
Originally or right now?
Yeah, originally.
Born in Ontario, just outside of Toronto. Grew up in the prairies. Am the son of Newfoundlanders, and I now live on Vancouver Island, so I'm a bit of a Heinz 57.
How was your childhood? Good growing up?
Yeah, I guess so. We moved around a little bit, not too much. I'm the youngest of four boys, so no sisters, just boys. So let's just say that I was humble growing up. I got my ass handed to me quite a bit, and it was good. I had really great mom and dad. They're still together. They live in Saskatchewan, and hardworking, and it was a lot of fun. Again, Newfoundland parents. How can it not be fun, right?
And how are your parents doing during this time?
What a time we're living in, huh?
Oh, it's insane.
So we talk pretty much every day. Actually, my whole family, we have a little sort of a Facebook family group chat thing happening. So we check in with each other quite a bit. And so, we adapt and we overcome. So they're instead of going out shopping, they're ordering their groceries and having them delivered and that sort of thing. So, they're holed up like the rest of us and they're staying safe. And, a couple of my older brothers are closer to them, of course, than I am. So they've been able to assist with certain things. So yeah, they're doing fine.
And speaking of COVID, with this actually really has an effect on what you do, because you work with us who, of course, at this time aren't able to tour unless, of course, they play from their living room. Yeah,
it's certainly more challenging, as is almost any occupation, but particularly with music and musicians, and of course, I feel for all of my clients and all the musicians out there who, this is their bread and butter to, make music, record music, produce music, and then go out and try to, sell that music. And that's obviously through playing live. It's a huge challenge. But at the same time, there's ways around doing those things. And it's pretty inspiring to see what artists are doing online, their living room concerts and those sort of things. And I've been able to enjoy some of those myself. But we, again, like anybody, we adapt and we overcome. And so as much as it's a challenge to work with artists on their live show, there's ways around that. We do it in a more creative way, I suppose.
So where do you think the music industry and the entertainment industry will be?
Oh, man, that's a good question. I think there's a lot of unknowns right now. But I think you and I can both agree that the music industry has changed so much over the last 20, 30, 40 years. 25 years ago, you could sell out an arena, if you were, playing that circuit. And now it's only the elite that can really do that. So you've seen a lot of change when it comes to live performance. A lot of bar gigs, but a lot of we talk about these house performances, and I think those house performances are going to continue on like they always have after we get through this. but I don't see any huge impact on how we are doing things right now.
How did you get into the music industry?
Okay. Where do I start? I've done a few different things. I was exposed to music pretty early in my life. As a kid with Newfoundlander parents. The growing up in the kitchen parties and that sort of thing. So music was always a part of my childhood years growing up, and so I was always exposed to it, always listening to it. Never really encouraged to be part of it, but it just kind of felt like, in your DNA sort of thing. So I think for me, I always had a love for music. And so it was pretty natural for me to want to do something in music, whether that be, guitar player or a singer or whatever. I actually started off as a drummer when I was a teenager. So that's kind of how it all started for me. It was actually in my first band that I was in the first band that I was in that wanted to actually make a career out of it. I was only 17 years old and I was a drummer, and we were all living in the same house together. There's four of us. And I was doing my chores one day. I was vacuuming the living room and had some heavy metal blasting on the ghetto blaster, and my guitar player came to the room and he's screaming at me to shut the vacuum off and shut the music off. So long story short, I shut everything down and I said, what's the problem? What do you need? And he said, we don't want you to play drums for us anymore. And I thought, oh my God, this is devastating. What am I going to do? And so I had actually started to pack my bags. I was going to move out. I thought, if I'm not playing drums in this band, I'm not going to live with them either. And he said, where are you going? And I said, and I told him, and I said, listen, if I'm not playing in this band, I'm certainly not going to live here. I'm going to move back home. And he goes, you didn't let me finish. We want you to sing. And so that's how I was introduced to singing. I was just singing along with the music I was listening to, and somebody saw something that I didn't, and that's kind of how my singing career was launched.
Did you have any vocal training after that, or did it just come naturally? Because some people, it just comes naturally.
Some people do have it naturally, and I don't think I was one of them. Again, I've always just been a lover of music, and all kinds of music, by the way. I grew up listening to old school country music, like the George Jones and, stuff like that. And I listened to the Beach Boys, and then, I'd take out my Beach Boys record and I'd throw on a Iron Maiden record. So my exposure to music was very diverse, and I just always found myself singing along. And so maybe it was a little bit of both, maybe a natural ability, but also something that I really did work on all the time. Not because I thought I was going to become a singer, but it was just something I really enjoyed. And so I'd always try to copy and try to mimic whoever I was listening to.
And how long did that band last?
That band, we started in like 1989, I think. And we did our first and only record, actually, in 1991. And I actually left the band before the record came out. And so it didn't really go anywhere. And really, I do have a copy of that record. And no, I will not share it with anybody. It was terrible.
Well, let's talk about the success you had with Surrender. Take us back to that time.
I think probably the best years of my life, I got to be honest with you. Especially looking back on it, it was just so exciting. Almost every moment was so exciting. But we weren't really a great band per se. We loved what we were doing. We were writing our original content. But I think it was just a case of right place, right time. And it just, all the doors that were supposed to open for us. And I don't think it had much to do with how talented we were as much as it was just, like I said, right place, right time. And so It was nothing but excitement. And we started, I think, in 1994, and we basically completed our career in 1997, late 1997. Did a reunion. I think we went till 1998, and then we did a reunion show in 1999, and that was the last time we played together. But and even that was just super, super exciting. And to be honest with you, we're all spread out now. I'm here in BC. My guitar player is in Manitoba. My bass player's in Saskatchewan. My drummer's in California, and we still are just the closest of friends. And we often tease each other about, hey, we should do another reunion. And it's just so exciting to talk about. But I don't know if that'll ever happen. But we had a wonderful, wonderful journey.
So now you have Jason Parsons Productions, where you try to help out some younger bands. So what do you think the number one mistake that a young band makes?
I'm gonna say that probably the biggest mistake that bands make is thinking that they have what it takes without the help of other musicians, without the help of a network of support, without understanding that as much as they might be a great singer or a great guitar player or whatever instrument they play, despite the fact that they might be very talented, that doesn't mean that everybody else agrees with them. So I think that's the biggest mistake, is that we when we have our eyes set on the stars, it's almost like a horse with blinders on. We just don't see the peripheral. And although sometimes that can be good, because when we're focused on a vision or a dream or a goal, we really do want to set our eye towards that goal. Sometimes we lose sight, but we lose the more detailed vision of how we're going to get there.
What is your approach to songwriting?
Well, I haven't been involved a whole lot in songwriting as of late. But for me, like in my own songwriting, I know that when I started, again, I was just like everybody else, where I had the blinders on and I would just write for me kind of thing and write what I thought. And I really did not want to collaborate. For whatever reason, I felt like if I'm going to write a song, it has to be all mine. And that was probably a huge disadvantage. I did write a couple of songs that did well, but I think had I been more open to collaborating and being more inclusive of, having the ideas that my fellow musicians, when they would offer criticisms or ideas, had I done that, I think there probably would have been a lot more good songs in our arsenal. So my approach now is more of a collaborative approach, because anybody can come up with a great idea, but that idea is not really, complete until you write the chord progression, you write the melody, you write the harmonies, you write the accompaniment. There's a lot of aspects to writing a song. And even now with today's technology, being able to lay down ideas is so much easier than it was back then. And so, there's a real advantage now as a musician when it comes to technology, being able to, set up a small, setup in your garage or your bedroom or your basement and be able to lay down tracks and then bounce them electronically via email to somebody else who's collaborating with you. It's astounding how far we've come.
What's a song out there that you wish you had written?
Had I known you were going to ask me that question, I probably would have spent some time on YouTube or something. I don't know. There's just so many great songs, and even great songs now, like that we're hearing. There's classic songs. That's so hard to answer. And let me just say for the record, um, you know, and I want to reiterate, I am a lover of so many different styles and genres of music. Um, you know, I still love country music. I still love a lot of the '80s rock, and a lot of people make fun of me for that. But I think during that time with the world that we lived in the '80s, there was some really great bands that came out of that era.
Yes.
And I have friends that still make fun of me, like, "Oh, '80s, completely terrible." And then you talk to the next person, and they'll say, "Oh, '70s, completely terrible." Uh, right? Or '90s, "Oh, that was such an awful period of time." And so I loved music through all of those times. And so to ask me what song I wish I would have written, I just really can't answer you. There's just so many songs.
All right, fair enough. But who are some of your influences? You talk about the old country like Merle Haggard and Waylon Jennings. Who else?
All of those artists, obviously, I love. If I think about country, George Jones really did it for me. Uh, the emotion that he was able to communicate while singing was just second to none, in my opinion. George Jones was the king, as far as I'm concerned. He just really did it the right way. But we have, like a current country artist. His name is Mo Pitney. If you haven't heard of Mo Pitney, you need to Google this guy, because he's like the modern day George Jones. He's a young guy, but man, oh man, can that guy deliver a song. As far as other rock bands and that are out there, again, I kind of listen to everything. I tune into my local rock station. I listen to the Imagine Dragons and Current Swell and whoever's playing modern tunes. Once in a while I hear a song and I love it. And in fact, something funny happened to me a couple of months ago. I was driving home and I was listening to the radio, and this song came on, and I thought, man, who are these guys? Never heard this song before, but I really like it. And so anyway, I had to go home and I had to Google this song, and it turned out it was a Vancouver Island band. And I just sent him a message. I said, "Hey man, I'm really digging your tune." And the next thing you know, we've built a relationship, and we're hoping that down the road we're going to work together. And I was able to speak at a music conference, and they were there, and it was kind of cool. So it's all about building relationships. Music is music. A song that I might love may not resonate with you, and that's so totally okay. And because that's what music is all about. We don't all have to like the same music.
There is a lot of talent here on Vancouver Island. I also know you're working with a band in Camp River, Vogue Villains.
So Vogue Villains, yeah, I've got a pretty strong relationship with those guys. They are all tremendous individuals. So as a band, I mean, they're a great band, but working with them really it was just cemented for me just how solid they are as individuals. And it's interesting when we get into rehearsals, and they play these songs that are, let's be honest, they're unique. They're not like anybody else. They sound like Vogue Villains. They don't sound like anybody else. And what was interesting for me is just getting in there and tearing those songs apart and figuring out the inspiration for those songs, and who the chief songwriter was, for example, or how did that guitar lick come about. So that was a lot of fun. In fact, I think it was maybe 6-8 weeks ago, we did 3 days of rehearsals, and it was a ton of fun. Those guys are a blast to hang out with.
So in your 20s, you're in a rock band. In the 90s, how did you end up in the military?
Well, I have, like I said, 3 older brothers. My second oldest brother joined when he was, I think he was just turned 19, or he may have been 18 around that time. And so he went off to do that stuff. And then the brother that's just just next to me, my next oldest brother, he joined as well. And his actual first posting after all his training was completed was in at CFB Comox, to be honest. So that was around the time that I had done the record. And when I left the band, he invited me to come stay with him for the summer up in Comox, and I just loved the area. Anyway, fast forward a number of years. I'm now 30 years old. I've done all of my recording and touring with my newest band that I was in. And that band, by the way, was where I found most of my success with my songwriting and singing and touring and that sort of thing. And it was time to sort of close up shop. And I thought, oh man, here I am. I'm 30 years old. I'm married. I've got 2 very young children. What am I going to do? And my older brother said, hey man, why don't you join the military? And I thought, man, I'm too old for that. but anyway, after a few conversations, he had convinced me to do it. And so I packed my bags and headed off to basic training when I was 30 years old.
I know you can't go into too much detail, but you were overseas for the military for about 18 months. How did that affect your relationship with your family?
That was very challenging. It was ways, but very challenging in a lot of ways. So I had actually gone to Europe for just shy of 2 years. When I first departed, the understanding was that I was going to be there for 12 months, no more than that. And so that's kind of what I had myself, psyched up for was a 12-month period away. And so we made all the arrangements, how are we going to pay the bills and how's this going to work? And are you able to, mow the lawn and take up the garbage and handle, getting the kids to school and all that stuff. And so we had that all sort of arranged. And then while I was over there and I was approaching that 12-month period, they couldn't find a replacement for me. And so long story short, we were scrambling, trying to figure out what was going to happen. And I ended up being there for 19 months. So about a year and 7 months is how long I was there. It was pretty difficult, especially those last 7 months, because, going into it, I knew I was going to be away for a year. Adding another 7 months to that was quite a challenge.
So with Jason Parsons Productions, with the performance coach, what do you offer to somebody that comes in, to an artist that comes in and is looking for your help?
Well, that is, again, a really good question. It really depends on the artist. So I have worked with different levels of artists throughout my coaching career. And so, you may be working with a band like Lobo Village who have kind of got their sound already figured out. And now it's a matter of just building the show and trying to create a live experience that is going to be capturing and engaging for their audience. I've also worked with bands that are not at that level yet, who are kind of at the songwriting stage and still trying to kind of figure out who they are as an artist. And so sometimes it's more of a mentorship relationship where, we spend time in that songwriting sort of atmosphere, and we bounce ideas off, and maybe, I challenge them with, with the format of their song, or I say, well, why are you using this word when you could be using this word? And we teach about, brevity and fluidity in a song. And I've also had the opportunity to work with Grammy nominated artists where they've really got it figured out. And now they're at a place where they're doing a very important show, and it has to go off without a hitch, because there's going to be important people in the audience, or they might be representing something bigger than they've ever represented before. And it has to be top notch. And so that's going to look a lot different working with, an award-winning band than it will with somebody that's kind of just figuring out who they are as an artist. Yeah. And so just to sort of, let's go back in time just a few years. So, when I was singing in my band Surrender, we went to Nashville And we thought we were just going for a week-long workshop kind of thing. And so we fly into Nashville, we grab a taxi, we head to the hotel, and our manager met us in the lobby, and she's like, "Oh my God, where are your instruments?" And we were like, "What do you mean our instruments?" And she said, "Well, you guys are on tonight at 7." And I was like, "Man, you didn't tell us we were playing here. We thought we were just like coming for like a workshop, rubbing shoulders with people." And she goes, No. This is like we got you. You guys are playing twice this week. And I was like, "Oh my God." So luckily there was a band there also from Canada that we had toured with previous, and we had a pretty good relationship with them. And they allowed us to use their gear. But this is how it kind of all started for me, going from musician to or artist to coach, was that, we ended up performing that night, and it was a room full of industry executives, all in Nashville, record executives, A&R guys, imaging, like the whole deal. Anybody who was anybody in the scene at that time was there, and we completely bombed. It was absolutely terrible. And I just remember burying my face in my pillow that night thinking, "Oh my God, I'll never sing again. This is the worst night of my entire life." And I thought I'd never recover from that. But during that time, during that week that we were in Nashville, I ended up meeting a guy named Tom Jackson. And Tom Jackson is a performance coach, or a live music producer, is what we call ourselves, who works with bands. And so this guy's worked with anybody who's anybody coming out of Nashville. I'm talking about Taylor Swift, the band Perry, Jars of Clay, everybody. This guy, if anybody's coming out and they're launching, he's probably had something to do with it. And so we had a chance to spend about a week with him, learning about what he does, and how to perfect our own show and that sort of thing. And I just remember in that time thinking, if I ever stop singing, that's what I want to do. I want to help bands really connect with their audience. I want to help them sell their merchandise. I want to help them not make the mistakes that everybody makes. I want to help them to develop a clear vision for their show. And so that's really why I'm doing what I'm doing. I worked with Tom. I actually studied underneath him a few years ago, more than a few years ago. And so I launched myself as a live music producer, performance coach back in like 2011, 2012, something like that. And I got to be honest with you, I love what I do. There's nothing more satisfying than working with an artist and showing them something so elementary and so simple that they never really thought about before, and seeing it happen and seeing it develop on stage. It's really satisfying and very fulfilling.
Well, to learn more about Jason Parsons and Jason Parsons Productions, how can they find you?
They can go to Jason Parsons Productions on Facebook. They can go to @Jason Parsons Productions on Instagram. Yeah, those are probably the two best places to get a hold of me.
Okay, one final question. Who's your favorite songwriter right now?
My favorite songwriter? Well, right now, I'm going to go ahead with Mo Pitney. Yeah, if you listen to this guy, like I said earlier, country guy, very young in the industry, very genuine. He's able to craft a song and communicate the emotion of that song seamlessly. And not everybody loves country, but and I'm not a big lover of country either. But the message always gets through with this guy, and I really appreciate what he does.
Well, a huge thank you for being on the show, man. I totally appreciate it.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. And listen, I am a big fan of what you do, and I'm so thankful that you thought of me to come on and hang out with you.
I am on Facebook and Twitter. You can Google the Dawg House with the rock dog Andrew Davis to learn more.
You've been listening to The Dawg House with Andrew Davis.